Good morning, class, and welcome to our video on histograms. A histogram is another type of data display like a circle graph. It's a little less common than a circle graph, so you might know less about it. But let's start by getting down our topic and essential question and our definition. A histogram is a type of bar graph used to display data that has been organized into equal intervals. It's going to look a lot like a bar graph. One of the main differences between a histogram and a bar graph, however, is that in a histogram the bars must touch. Okay, this shows that the intervals are right next to each other. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this and what intervals mean as we go forward. Okay, once you have that definition down, let's get down the essentials, things that you need to absolutely make sure you include when graphing a histogram. So get these down in your notes and we'll go through them as we make a couple. So number one, the first thing you're going to do when you're making a histogram is to make a frequency table. Your frequency table is going to have 3 to 5 equal intervals. If you don't know what a frequency table is, don't worry. We'll go over that when we start to make our histograms today. Okay, we're going to use that frequency table to organize the data and prepare it to be graphed. Okay, once you have the frequency table made, you're going to label your horizontal and vertical axes. Okay. Then you're going to add a title. All good graphs should have a title saying what it's a graph of. And then for each time interval, you're going to draw a bar graph whose height is given by the frequency. So this is basically a bar graph of frequency, or how many times something occurs in a given window. Okay. So let's give those down. That might not make a lot of sense right now, but I think once you see a couple examples, it'll be a lot clearer. Okay, the first frequency table in histogram we are going to create is about movie time. So we're given this information. The running time for movies in minutes out in theaters are as follows: 112, 149, 96, 73, 109, 121, 89, 94, 111, 127. Okay, so we're going to organize that into a frequency table. So when we're doing a frequency table, what we're going to do is we're going to figure out what our intervals are. So here it tells us to use the intervals 70 to 89, 90 to 109, 110 to 129, 130 to 149. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each of these numbers and I'm going to figure out what range it falls into. Okay, so you can have how many movies are between these two times, how many are between these two, and so on. Now it told us what intervals to use in this case. We're going to go ahead and do that. But we're not always going to be told that. So let's talk a little bit about where these intervals came from. Looking at our numbers, I can see that my smallest number is 73, and my biggest number is 149. So if I round those numbers off, this can round down to 70, and this can round up to 150. So all my numbers are between 70 and 150. So that's why I have my first interval starting at 70. Now if you subtract 150 minus 70, you get 80. So I know those numbers are 80 apart. Okay, which means if I'm aiming for 3 to 5 intervals, I know 80 is really nicely divisible by 4, gives me nice round numbers. So that means I'm going to break it up into 4 groups of 20. Okay, so I'm going to start a new interval every 20. This starts at 70, 90, 100, 130. So with these 4 intervals, I can get all those numbers between 70 and 150. Okay, so that's why these intervals were chosen. Like I said, that was done for us, so that's not a step we had to do here. But when you're creating your own histograms, you might need to decide how wide you want your intervals to be. And again, a good rule of thumb is between 3 and 5 intervals. All right, now that I have those intervals down, I'm going to go through and I'm going to look for how many tallies go in each interval. So first I'm going to look from 70 to 89. I'm going to go through, I'm going to highlight numbers that are between 70 and 89. So I got the 73, and I got that 89, and that is it. So there are 2 numbers between 70 and 89. Okay. Changing my color, and I'm going to highlight numbers that are between 90 and 109. So looking for those numbers, I got a 96, a 109, a 94. So there are 3 numbers in that range. Okay, so I'll get 3 tallies for that. Okay. Next, I'm going to look for 110 to 129. So this is there. Oh, let's use a different color. Okay, so this one is in there, 110 to 129, that one's in there, that one's in there, that one's in there. So we got 4 numbers in that range. Okay, last but not least, we got 130 to 149, where we have this one number. It's the only one in them. And I want to use a different color. So there's only one number in that interval, and I can see that I've gotten all of my numbers. Okay, so our totals are 2, 3, 4, and 1. Okay. Looking back at our list, it says the second thing to do is to label our horizontal and vertical axis. Okay, so let's do that. So this is a running time of movie lengths, and it's measured in minutes. So I'm going to label my x-axis minutes, okay, because this is where my intervals are going to be. And the intervals are measuring how many minutes long the movie is. Okay, the y-axis is always going to be, on every histogram, frequency. Okay, because a histogram is a bar graph of frequencies. Okay, so that is what we would put there. Right there. Okay, and then we should have a title for our histogram as well. So we would say, what is the graph of? It's graph of running time for movies. Something like that. You can put that in your own words, but something that tells you what this is a graph of is what we should have up top. All right, now that I have that, I'm going to graph bar graphs, and each bar graph for each one of these intervals, I drag over the intervals here. Each one of these is going to have a bar that goes up to the height of whatever the frequency is. So I can look at each one of these intervals and see how many movies falls into that range. Okay, so if I think about my frequency here, the highest it gets is 4. So I'm going to need to be able to go up to at least 4. Let's mark off 1, 2, 3, and 4. Just like I would on any graph. And then I'm going to make my bars. Okay, so the first interval from 70 to 89, there were 2 numbers in there. So I'm going to go bar graph that goes up to 2. Okay, the second interval goes up to 3, so there were 3 numbers in that range. The next one is 4, because there are 4 numbers in this interval. Okay, and the last one was 1. So I'm just going to go up to 1 for that last one. Okay, so that's what my histogram should look like. Looks like a bar graph. Again, it's important to notice that the bars need to be touching in a histogram. That shows you that there's no space in between where this one starts, where this one ends and this one picks up. Right? Every one of these numbers should fit into one of these categories. So there we have it. This is what a histogram looks like. I'll give you a chance to create your own in your notes using this set of data. Okay, it tells us again what the intervals are supposed to be: 145 to 149.9, 150 to 154.9. And the reason these intervals go to decimals, I didn't just go up to 149 and then pick this one up at 150, is because we have some decimals in our answers. But in our numbers here, the decimals, it's never more than 1 decimal point. It's always to the 10th. So that means that I wouldn't need to go into any more decimals than just 1. So if this stops at 149.9, and this one picks up at 150, there's not going to be any number that falls between those 2 categories. Because to get between those 2 categories, you need to use more than 1 decimal point. Okay, so that's why I have decimals here where I didn't have those in the last one. If these were all whole numbers, then I could have just gone to 149 and then picked it up at 150. Okay. So go ahead, pause the video here, create the histogram in your notes, and then unpause it so you can compare and make sure yours looks the same as mine. Okay, your histogram should look something like this. Work it up in these four intervals. We should have bars at 3, 2, 2, and 3. You should have height down here, frequency here, and some title up here like student heights. Okay, so hopefully that's what yours look like. Alright, now that we've made a couple, let's just real quickly look at some information, some questions we can and cannot answer as we try to interpret a histogram. Histograms are nice in seeing trends in data, but they do have a little bit of a weakness in that there's some questions that you just can't answer based on what we're seeing in the graph. So first, let's get into the question, what is the size of the intervals? That is a question we can answer. If I look at these intervals here, this one starts at 7, this one starts at 15, this one starts at 23. So we got a new interval starting every 8. So I'd say the width of the interval is 8. Okay. Now looking at again at the 7 to 14, you might be tempted to say that's 7, because 14 minus 7 is 7, but if you count all those numbers, including both 7 and 14, you'll see that there are actually 8 numbers that fall into that category. So count out with me if you're not sure. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. That's 8 numbers since we're including both endpoints. Okay? So the size of the intervals in the histogram is 8. Okay, how many theme parks charge less than $23? Okay, well, $23 is where this interval starts. Okay, so I actually can answer that question because everything in this range and everything in this range will be less than 23. Right, so if I add those up, there are 5, looks like, theme parks that are between $7 and $14, and there are 7 that are between 15 and 22. So 5 plus 7 is 12. There are 12 of these theme parks that charge less than $23. Okay, the next question, how many theme parks charge $25? This is an example of a question I cannot answer. Okay, because if I look, 25 would be in this category. So if any parks charge $25, they would fall in this range. But I don't know the exact number, so I don't know if any of these are 25, if they're all 25. These might all 4 be 25, or maybe, they're all 23, or they're all 30, or, there's a mix of them. So I can't tell how many are exactly 25. Okay, so I'd have to say, not enough information. I cannot answer some of those specific questions with histograms. Okay. Next one, how many theme parks charge between 15 and 30? If I look, because I have intervals that start and stop at 15 and 30, this is a question I can answer. Okay, so here are all the 15 to 22, here's all the 23 to 30. So these bars together would be everything that's between 15 and 30. Okay, so here I have 7 parks, here I have 4, 7 plus 4 is 11. There's 11 that are in that range from 15 to 30. Okay, what is the most common price of admission to a theme park? Again, this is another one asking about the specific prices. Because I pool them all into intervals, this is another example of something I cannot answer. Okay, I don't know. I know this is the most common range, but I don't know what the prices are in here. Okay, and also these could be scattered around between 15 and 22. Or maybe everything in this interval is $10, for instance, which would make that the most common. So I don't know what these specific data points are. I don't know what these specific prices are. So I can't tell what the most common price of admission is. So again, for that one, I got to put not enough info. Okay. All right, so I'm going to pause here, give you a chance to practice some of this before we conclude our video. Okay, hopefully those practice problems went well. Remember, there are additional links if you practice this. Histograms can be a little bit tricky, so if it's a little fuzzy, you might want to try those. And as always, I'm available for questions between 10 and 12 and 1 and 3. So I'll talk to you then, or see you in the next video.